Hi, once again, I thank you for joining me. Disappointment can be a heavy cross to bear. It's one thing if you're enduring a difficulty. It's another if you think you're going to come out of it and then instead it gets worse. Disappointment can lead to discouragement, and discouragement can lead, in extreme cases, to the danger of despair. For the last few months, it seemed like we were coming out of this pandemic and things were getting better and better, and we were feeling closer and closer to normal. Unfortunately, with the emergence of the Delta variant and others, things have once again gotten worse. And because of that, we have a heavy cross to bear. Because of that, we have had to reinstitute some safety protocols that we started last weekend. Namely, we're utilizing every other pew at Mass. We're asking people to space out somewhat. We're asking people to wear masks when they come to Mass. We're asking that the two far sections of the church be reserved for those who wear masks. Remember, there are some people who might have a bit of immunocompromising or might be particularly sensitive to things. So those two sections, the Holy Family section, the choir section, we ask those be reserved for people who wear masks. The two center sections would be for people who wear masks or who don't wear masks. This might lead to some overflow, and we will be prepared to broadcast Mass downstairs in the Woolridge Center at 4:30 and 10 o'clock, and at other Masses if necessary. We haven't had to do that yet, and I know that's certainly not ideal. But our goal is to keep everyone safe. Now, I know there are some people who think that these protocols are way too strict. There are other people who think that perhaps these protocols aren't strict enough. And what I can tell you is that we're trying. We're trying to serve everyone as best as we can, and we're trying to keep people safe. And this is a disappointment, but disappointments can also be an invitation to hope. One thing I appreciate by studying the lives of the saints is that while we think of them as doing all these glorious, marvelous, magnificent things for God and for humanity, which they certainly have done, there are other saints who often served God and others in the midst of disappointment. Some of their lives went from one disappointment to another, and sometimes they would even go from one failure, perhaps, to another as well. And yet they persevered. And so disappointment is an invitation to perseverance. Perseverance literally means to serve through the good times, to serve through the bad times. And to get through this, I encourage people, well, obviously we think about Jesus. We can particularly meditate on Jesus carrying the cross, because this is a heavy cross that we've been carrying for a long time and that we have to continue to carry at least for a while longer. Someone else that I draw inspiration from is St. Joseph, who, for obvious reasons, I have a special affection for, particularly in the movie that came out several years ago called The Nativity. What it shows in St. Joseph in the Nativity story is two things, and they're two things of what I call the essence of maturity. Number one, he did what needed to be done, and number two, he didn't complain about it. And to me, that is what maturity is about. Number one, to do what needs to be done, and number two, not to complain about it. And sometimes, honestly, number two might be a little bit harder than number one. But inspired by the example of St. Joseph and assisted by his prayers, and most of all, inspired by the example of Jesus, we continue to move forward as a people of faith, as a people striving to live lives of intentional faith, striving to live lives of intentional faith in every little way. Let us continue to pray for each other and to pray for our suffering world.